Lockdowns. Most people think of them as boring stretches of endless days confined to your house. But for me, the lockdown of 2020 became a memory I'll never escape, a nightmare I'll take to my grave. It started innocently enough. I lived alone in a small one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of the city. The pandemic had forced us all into isolation. The silence that blanketed my neighborhood was oddly soothing at first. No honking cars. No loud chatter from the CAF below. Just me, my books, my work-from-home routine, and the occasional sound of my upstairs neighbor dragging furniture late at night. But one night something changed. It was around 2 a.m. on a Friday. I was sitting on my couch scrolling through my phone. The apartment was dark except for the faint glow of my TV, playing an old sitcom. Suddenly, I heard a soft tapping at my window. I froze. My apartment was on the third floor. There was no balcony, no fire escape, no ledge that anyone could stand on. I tried to dismiss it as a branch hitting the glass, but when I looked outside, the tree was far from the window. Swaying gently in the breeze, the tapping came again. I got up, heart racing, and approached the window. Nothing. Just the empty street below, lit by a dim street lamp. I shook it off and went back to my couch, convincing myself I was imagining things. But then, just as I sat down, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. It read, my breath caught in my throat. My fingers trembled as I stared at the screen. Before I could think, I typed back, no response. I tried to shrug it off as a prank. Maybe someone in the building was messing with me. But deep down, I felt the first twinge of dread settle in my chest. The next few nights passed uneventfully, and I began to convince myself that it had been a one-off incident. But then, on Monday night, something else happened. I was lying in bed, about to fall asleep, when I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my apartment. Normally, this wouldn't have bothered me, except my building had been nearly empty since the lockdown began. Most of the tenants had left to stay with family or moved out entirely. The footsteps stopped right outside my door. I held my breath, listening intently. Then came the sound of paper sliding under my door. I sat up, heart pounding, and turned on the bedside lamp. Gathering my courage, I walked to the door and picked up the note. It was a piece of lined paper, torn from a notebook, with shaky handwriting that read. I felt a chill run down my spine. I threw the note on the table and immediately locked the deadbolt on my door, checking it twice. I peered through the peephole, but the hallway was empty. The rest of the night was sleepless. The next morning, I called the building manager, Mr. Ellis, and told him about the note. He seemed concerned but brushed it off, saying it was probably a bored kid playing pranks. He promised to check the security cameras and get back to me, but he never did. 2 nights later, I was working late on my laptop when the lights flickered. At first, I thought it was just a power surge. But then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement in the corner of the room. I snapped my head toward it, but there was nothing there. Just a shadow cast by the lamp. I shook my head and went back to work, but the feeling of being watched lingered. It was like an invisible presence had settled in the room. With me.at midnight, I decided to call it a night. As I got up to turn off the lights, I saw something on the window. A handprint. It was faint but unmistakable, smeared slightly as if someone had pressed their palm against the glass and dragged it down. My stomach churned. I grabbed my phone and dialed Mr. Ellis, but the call went straight to voicemail. Feeling desperate, I called the police. When the officers arrived, they searched the apartment and the surrounding area but found nothing. They told me it was probably an old handprint I hadn't noticed before and advised me to keep my windows locked. But I knew they were wrong. That Friday, things reached a horrifying peak. It started with another text from the unknown number, "You're not alone tonight." This time, I didn't respond. I didn't move. I sat frozen on my couch, staring at the message, trying to convince myself it was some sick joke. Then, the lights went out. The entire apartment was plunged into darkness. My phone's flashlight became my only source of light as I moved cautiously through the rooms, checking the locks on every door and window. As I walked into the living room, my phone buzzed again. Another text, "I'm inside." I felt the blood drain from my face. My hands shook as I swung the flashlight beam around the room, illuminating nothing but empty space. Then I heard a faint creak, like the sound of a footstep on the floorboards. It was coming from the bedroom. I wanted to run, but my legs felt like they were made of lead. Summoning every ounce of courage, I crept toward the bedroom door, which was slightly ajar. I pushed it open, holding my breath. The room was empty. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. As I turned to leave, I saw something in the mirror above the dresser. A figure. It was standing behind me, its face obscured by shadows. I spun around, but the room was empty. When I looked back at the mirror, the figure was gone. Panic overtook me. I grabbed my phone and ran out of the apartment, not stopping until I was outside on the street. I called the police again, and this time they took me seriously. The officers searched my apartment thoroughly and found no signs of forced entry or anyone hiding inside. But when they checked the security footage, things took a darker turn. The cameras showed a man entering the building the night I received the first note. He wasn't a tenant, and no one recognized him. Worse, there was footage of him standing outside my door for hours, just staring at it. The police suspected he was the one behind the texts and the handprint, but they never found him. He seemed to have vanished without a trace. After that night, I couldn't stay in the apartment. I packed my things and moved back to my parents' house in another city. But even now, I can't shake the feeling that he's still out there, watching, waiting. And every so often, late at night, I get a text from an unknown number that says, "Miss me?"